Guess what happens when you write up your best employee after he came in to help on his day off? My buddy Steve had worked at this small business for over a decade. 10 solid years of showing up early, staying late, pulling his weight, and then some. He wasn't flashy or loud, just dependable. The kind of employee who quietly trained new hires, solved department issues before they became problems, and volunteered when no one else would. The guy you could count on in the chaos. The one every workplace wishes they had 10 of. Steve didn't just do his job, he made things work. And for a long time, management seemed to recognize that. But in the last year or so, the tone of the workplace had shifted. New faces in leadership, less appreciation, more micromanagement. The culture soured. It was no longer about collaboration or respect. It became about control. And while Steve wasn't the type to kick up dust, he definitely noticed. Still, Steve kept doing what he did best. Even on his days off, he'd often swing by for a couple of hours to get ahead on paperwork or help organize backlogged files. It wasn't required, and he wasn't on the clock, but he understood how those small actions made life easier for the rest of his department. Management knew he did this, and had never once objected. Then came the holiday season. You know the drill. Orders piling up, everyone stretched thin, long hours, short tempers. Steve put in a 60-hour week without a word of complaint. He had 2 days off coming. He could have spent them on the couch, but instead, he drove back in on day 2 to help clean up the mess everyone else was too buried to handle. It was mid-afternoon, and Steve was wrapping up when his manager stormed over and barked at him to stop screwing around and get back on the floor. Steve calmly reminded him he wasn't on the clock, just lending a hand, and that he'd be out of there in 5 minutes. But the manager wasn't hearing it. "Get your ass back out there," he snapped. Steve didn't flinch. "Not happening. I'm going home." The next morning, Steve was called into the office, scolded like a teenager, and handed a write-up for insubordination. Management expected him to take it. Maybe they thought he needed the job too much. Maybe they just forgot who they were dealing with, because Steve, he was done. He took the write-up without a word, signed it, and handed the paper back along with a sealed envelope. "What's this?" his manager asked. Steve smiled. "My 2 weeks' notice." It was like watching a light switch flip. Suddenly, the manager was backpedaling, trying to soften his tone. He asked Steve to stick it out through the holidays, said it had all been a misunderstanding. He even dangled a raise. Then the department head came in. More apologies, bigger offers, a fresh title, whatever it would take to keep Steve on the floor. But it was too late. Steve didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. He just said no. Because here's what they didn't consider. Steve didn't need them. He was financially solid. His wife made great money, and his industry was in high demand. He was also days away from becoming a first-time dad. The timing couldn't have been more perfect. Instead of grinding through another miserable holiday season, Steve got to relax. No night shifts, no last-minute calls, no drama. Just time with his wife, time to prep for fatherhood, and time to breathe. The company, meanwhile, scrambled to fill the crater Steve left behind. It would take at least 2, maybe 3 people to do what Steve had handled on his own. Good luck training them before the rush hit.